A festival of this scale is impossible with the host of sponsors that we have. I'd like to take a few moments in thanking them. The festival is proud to present Z Entertainment as the title partner, Nexa, who has come on board for the very first time as the festival's associate partner, our venue partners, Rajan Kilachand and Bank of Baroda, JCB Prize for Literature Bookstore, managed by Full Circle, our cause partners, Dettol Banega Swatch India, Black and White, our celebration partner. Thank you to Jan Mikalski, Aga Khan Foundation, Getty Foundation, J. Paul Getty Trust, British Council, Nordic Lights, Mahindra World City, Dove, Airtel, Kingfisher, Grover, CK Birla Hospitals, Avid Learning for believing in the festival and continuing their support. New partners this year include Population Foundation of India, Child Labour Free Jaipur Initiative, DMI Finance, Dell, Sun Village, Air India, Ola, O2 Sparkle, and Swami. Our publishers, Penguin, MIT Press, Westland, Oxford Dictionaries, Murthy Classical Library of India of Harvard University Press, and HarperCollins. The future of every festival depends on its growing relationship with its existing and new audiences, and I would like to thank our media partners, Red FM and Rajasthan's very own Patrika Group and Bhaskar Group for their generous support year after year. Our new partners, Business Standard, Outlook, and DNA. Our social media partners, Facebook, Twitter, increasing our reach to the world, Vayus, Wattpad, and Launchora, our podcast partners. Please make a note in your program sheets that session 142D, that is set to start at 4:45 this evening, has been cancelled. This evening's musical treats include performances by Dub FX featuring Sahida Apsara and Mahesh Vinayakram, followed by a performance by Soulmate. This is at the Jaipur Music Stage, and you can avail passes to the show either online at Book My Show or at the venue itself, which is Clark's Amer. Now, for session 127, What Is Not Said, celebrating the short stories, it gives me great pleasure to introduce you to the speakers. Divya Vijay, storyteller and theatre artist, won the Best Manuscript Award at the 2017 Lito Fest held in Mumbai. Her book was recently shortlisted in the French Institute's official writers catalogue. Jan Carson, based in Belfast, is a writer and community arts facilitator. She's the author of a novel, a collection of short stories, and also a collection of microfiction. Her novel, The Firestarters, is forthcoming later this year. N.S. Madhavan is an award-winning Malayalam writer, essayist, and columnist. His comeback story, Higuita, has been critically acclaimed. He is a 4-time winner of the Katha Prize series for Malayalam. He has also won the Crossword Award for the Best Indian Fiction in Translation. Uday Prakash is one of the few Indian language writers who has been widely translated into vernacular and major foreign languages, and his work has also been adapted for stage and films. He returned the Sahitya Academy Award in protest of dissenting writers. Paul McVeigh, his debut novel, The Good Son, won the McCrea Literary Award and the Polari First Novel Prize. Co-founder of the London Short Story Festival, he will be the moderator for this session. Please, ladies and gentlemen, give a warm applause to welcome on stage our panelists for this session. Thank you.
Share a little bit. Hello, everyone. How are you? Good? Yes? Oh, yes. Hello. Yes, thank you for that. Yes, I do know you're here, and I will be talking to you occasionally. All right, prepare yourselves. Okay. Welcome to this event on the short story. It's a form that I love very much, and the first thing I'd like to do is to go around our panel and find out a little bit about their history with the short story, why they chose it as a genre to write in, particularly because it can be a genre that we struggle to find publishers for. And so you're often swimming upstream with this particular genre. So I'd like to ask, I'm going to ask you, Divya, first. What brought you to the short story form? What do you love about it?
I love that in short story, each and every word matters. Not like novels in which some lagging and some, some things can be overlooked in the novel. But it's not the case with the short story. We have to be very careful when writing it, And short story is a form which can be unforgiving.
Yes. And you, would you say that each short story that you write is very different, or do you have a sort of a specific form that you really like, a kind of genre of short stories that you fall into?
There is one story of mine which is being called Banafshay Khab. Banafshay means blue dreams. In it, there is one girl who has gone through recent breakup. But in a whole story, I haven't mentioned the breakup. I haven't given the backstory of girl and nothing about her relationship, but a reader has to infer from the details I have given in the story that what's going in the story.
Oh, brilliant. We're going to be talking more about that. So
yeah.
Do you have a little bit that you're going to read for us to give us a flavor of your writing?
Yes, why not?
Brilliant, thank you.
I'm going to read a story which in Hindi is being called Prem Path Aso Kathin, which means the tough terrain of love. Before reading a story, I want to tell you a story behind story, how I happened to write this story. It's a very interesting one. What happened? One of my friends came to me, and he was very sad. I asked him, what happened? He said, break up. I asked, why? He said, I abused my girlfriend. I was like, why you abused her? He said, she's talking to many people simultaneously like she's talking to me. I said, so you are doing, same thing you are doing. He said, मेरी बात अलग है. So why ये अलग क्यों है? तो वहाँ से इस कहानी का बीज पड़ा. So I'm going to read story for you guys. I don't know when I woke up. Was it after a few minutes, a few hours, or a few days? I had no clue. Nilakshi had her hand on my forehead and was talking to someone on the phone. As soon as I opened my eyes, she handed the phone to me. I could hear the voice screaming through the phone, like the sound of horses' hooves in a silent valley, like the support of a parapet in the pouring rain on the mountainside. I clung to the voice. The warmth of the voice completely engulfed me. My lips stopped trembling. I became pliant like a child. The voice was gurgling like a river. Sitting on the bank, I swayed with its rippling water. The voice would lilt, then stop, then continue. Hours, days, and centuries went by, and one day I expressed my desire to enter the river. And the very next moment, I was engulfed in the waves of the river. He was standing in front of me. What season is it? Looking at his clothes, I couldn't fathom the season. I was bathed in sweat. He was wearing a yellow pullover. I felt as if surrounded by butterflies. He was smiling. Nilakshi introduced us. This is my cousin and your angel. Angel? Was I addressing you as an angel? A loud guffaw was the answer. I'm Devansh. Now I was on a snow-covered mountain peak. The air was serene and ripe with unsung tunes. I wanted to be able to touch them. He held my hand. Now I was sliding downwards holding his hand. The path seemed familiar, as if I have seen it somewhere before. Where? Blobs of white snow were perched on the branches of the trees. The pictures which Shantanu had sent from Switzerland. I recall lines from some books of Nirmal Verma which Srikant had given to me. My first meeting with Arnab on the mountains, I woke up with a start. The voice had a face. I was looking at him with amazement. He planted a warm kiss on my forehead and, supporting me with his hands, took me to the window which overlooked a grassy plain. "This is December," he said. He knew what was on my mind. "Your voice is very nice," he said. "You too." The memories of the voices were bubbling over. Yes, I knew him. I was on the phone with him for many days. Nilakshi had managed to get an extension of the telephone. He picked up the shawl, kept nearby, draped it over my shoulders, and stroking my hair, kissed my head. I liked him. He started coming every day. He would paint pictures of me. He was a painter. "Why did you not marry till now?" I asked him one day. Didn't find the time and also never felt the need. As he stretched forward his hand to push back a strand of hair from my face, I took his hand and held it gently in my own. "Teach me how to paint." He was so beautiful that I wished to make a painting of him. After a few days of effort, I was able to draw a few lines. With every beautiful line, I felt the intensity of my love for him increase. Yes, he was in love with me, and I was in love once again. But he was not a replacement for the other three. He was the fourth branch. As soon as the seed of love sprouted, I felt greater affection for the other three. Where were they? I asked Nilakshi. In response, she placed a bundle of letters in front of me. They had been writing to me almost every day, thinking that I was ill and didn't want to meet anyone. They were giving me my space, but yet they were concerned about me and impatient to meet. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's a pleasure to talk to my fellow countrywoman, Jan Carson. And Jan, you write novels, but you've written a short story collection, but you've also written a book of microfiction. And I just wonder if you could maybe take a little minute to tell us what you think the difference is between short stories, flash fiction, microfiction, these different forms that seem to be sprouting up.
Yeah, gosh, that's a big question to cover
I
in
know.
a minute. I think if anybody does literary competitions or applies to journals, you'll see all of these terms coming up now, microfiction, flash fiction, and they all seem to have different meanings. I personally write a lot of microfiction. I spent a year writing short stories on the back of postcards. They come in about 250 words long, which means my handwriting is so tiny you actually need a magnifying glass to read them. But I think the wonderful thing about these new forms of short stories that are really condensed, I always say it's a lot easier to put the flab back onto a story than it is to take it off. And if any of you are writers, you will know the painful process of being edited to get back to the bones of your story. If you can get something down in 250 words, you can go back and flesh it out and develop your ideas and your characters. And a lot of these small pieces of microfiction I have in the end developed onto longer short stories and even novels at this stage. So they're an exercise really in writing concisely and paring back to the bones of a story.
And you've got a little section of your novel which actually is the chapters are the intersections with tiny little bits of microfiction. Would you like to read a little bit for us? Okay, so just to give you a wee bit of context, I am the most easily distracted writer in the world. I get very bored when I'm writing novels, and my editor says I keep doing cul-de-sacs. So I invent little characters and short stories that aren't really part of the novel. So what I've done for this new book, The Fire Starters, that's coming out in April, is I have small sections of short stories about the characters. They're about a page long. I'm going to introduce you to a slightly magical character here who sees the future every time he looks into a liquid surface. Connor talks vaguely of dark shapes and sadness, the world curling into itself like a piece of orange peel left too long in the sun. He sees strangers weeping in empty rooms, children hurt for no reason, many, many fires burning brightly. When he looks at water, he sees photographs of people he doesn't know, all muddled up together and moving quickly.
It's like flicking through the TV channels at speed. He is 8 when he says this. He has not yet learnt what a metaphor is. By the time he turns 10, Connor covers his eyes every time he leaves the house. It's easier not to see with a blindfold on. He reads widely, books borrowed from the Hollywood Arches library, and thus arms learns how to say precisely and exactly what is wrong with him. Connor sees the future in every liquid surface. Puddles, toilet bowls, tea peeling in the cup, the rain, which is ever present in East Belfast, sinks, spilt drinks, his own piss and blood, his salty tears. He no longer limits himself to water. Any wet substance will do. Even a closed tap terrifies him. The future isn't something he wants to stumble upon first thing in the morning while brushing his teeth. Connor is 14 now. He rarely leaves the house. He takes his drinks in a child's sippy cup and bathes twice a week, blindfolded in a darkened room. Even on dry days, he keeps the blinds drawn and the curtains pulled for fear of condensation on the windows. Sometimes a raindrop can be worse than the ocean, he says. No one really knows what he means by this. How could they? They're blessed with ordinary temporal eyes. Occasionally, Connor will ask to be taken to the sea. His father will drive him to Helen's Bay and sit beside him on the sea wall while Connor shudders like a struck thing, yet nevertheless lifts his head to stare out across the loch for as long as he can manage. He says he's trying to build up a resistance. He says he isn't unfortunate, just peculiarly blessed. His father doesn't believe him. He thinks his boy is looking for answers. Perhaps Connor wants to see the end of it all.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Ines, would you like to tell us a little bit about your love of the short story form? Perhaps even who are your favourite writers in the form? And give us...
Okay, I write in Malayalam. Difficult to pronounce. I started writing very young, and to begin with, I used to keep one of the Irish writers' book on my bedside when I was a college student. Joyce it was.
Yes. The Dubliners, was it? Was it the Dubliners?
Dubliners,
Yes.
Nothing else. So that was when I was very young. I suppose I've grown out of Joyce by now.
God forgive you.
So I write in Malayalam because that's my mother tongue. That comes easy to me. Generally, short story is conceived as a thought. It works on you, and then it comes out. And I think the short story, the difference between a short story and a novel is that a short story should have a plot, whereas novel need not have a plot.
Interesting. I like that.
I think you learned that from Joyce.
That's right. Actually, last year.
You haven't let go of him at all, have you?
Not at all. So that's it.
Oh, yeah. And you're going to do something wonderful for us, because you're going to read a little bit of a story in English, but the original also, and Malayalam as well.
So I think Jaipur should hear a little bit of Malayalam, because that's a language. So I'll read a para, then I'll read the translation. Mukundan, ചില നേരങ്ങളിൽ എൻ്റെ ഭർത്താവ്, ചില നേരങ്ങളിൽ ഞങ്ങളുടെ 2 കുട്ടികളുടെ അച്ഛൻ, ചില നേരങ്ങളിൽ അവരുടെ രക്ഷകർത്താവ്, ചില നേരങ്ങളിൽ എൻ്റെ അമ്മായിയമ്മയുടെ അരുമയായ 2ാമത്തെ മകൻ, ചില നേരങ്ങളിൽ പ്രേമൻ്റെ ബാല്യകാല സുഹൃത്ത്, ചില നേരങ്ങളിൽ പ്രേമൻ്റെ തൻ്റെ എതിരാളി, ചില നേരങ്ങളിൽ അടുത്ത കാലത്ത് പരിചയപ്പെട്ട പത്രപ്രവർത്തകൻ അനിൽ സക്സേനയുടെ കൂട്ടുകാരൻ, ചില നേരങ്ങളിൽ ഡൽഹിയിലെ അരങ്ങുകളിൽ നിറഞ്ഞു നിൽക്കുന്ന നാടകനടൻ, ചില നേരങ്ങളിൽ അയാളുടെ പഴയ ലൈക്ക പെൻഡാക്സ് ക്യാമറകളുമായി മുഖങ്ങൾ മാത്രം പടം പിടിച്ച് നടക്കുന്നവൻ. I think that's enough of Malayalam.
Thank you.
I'll read that bit in English so that. Mugundan, at times my husband, at times the father of our 2 children, at times their guardian, at times my mother-in-law's darling second son, at times Preman's childhood friend, at times the same Preman's rival, at times companion to the newly found journalist friend Anil Saxena, at times the talented actor who dominated Delhi theatre, at times one who went about with his old Leica Pentax camera capturing faces on film, at times a valorous egotist, at times totally indifferent, at times a good boss, at times one who fretted about his country's politics, at times one who went about searching for antiques in flea market, at times one who cracked humorless jokes, at times one who curled up on the drawing room sofa reading asterisk comics, at times one who spoke authoritatively on Hitchcock films, at times one who flaunted his looks in a Hathaway shirt and Tommy Hilfiger tie, at times one who sipped single malt whiskey that lay between ice cubes with a copper gleam, at times one who collected old gramophone records, at times one who gave me pleasure as he shared my bed, at times one who boisterously acted out his stories for our children, finally did something for all times. Mukundan died 2 months ago.
Wow. Lovely. How lucky are we, eh? Sounds a bit like Irish, by the way, I think. We will have a drink later on and share languages. I think we'll understand each other very well. How are you doing today? Good. Would you tell us a little bit about your love for the short story, why it's a form that you as a writer are drawn to?
I think I have not chosen to be a short story writer. And originally I keep on saying that I'm a poet. And originally I'm a poet. And it happened just, I felt like I should write a short story, and I wrote it. And after that, people accepted me as a short story writer. And sometimes I get confused whether I'm a poet or I'm a short story writer. So it's difficult for me what are the forms and what are other structural differences between a long short story, a short story, a micro short story. I just write something, and then every time I write, I think I'm writing a poem. And sometimes I write a poem, I feel like I'm writing a short story. And I tried, like few of my short stories are very long, and they have become almost like a novel. And few of my short stories are so small that it'll look like fables or something, you know. So when I got that we are going to have 5 minutes of reading, so I tried to find out stories of which in reading that don't take much time. So I read 3, 4, 5 stories, and finally I selected one, and I sent you the image because I was really running around. I didn't have time to do anything else. So I put my mobile and took the photograph and sent it to you. So please allow me to read me in my original language, which is Hindi. And I think everyone understands it. So that would be better if I read it. Though I have a wonderful translation by one of my great friends, Robert Hugstead, and he has translated it into English. But allow me to read in Hindi.
Please.
Thank you. The title of the short story is Gangu. Gangu. इस कहानी का शीर्षक है गंगू। वे इतिहास के कीड़े थे पागल होने के पहले तक उनका इतिहासकारों के बीच बड़ा सम्मानित स्थान था। राष्ट्रीय इतिहास अनुसंधान परिषद के लिए उन्होंने कई महत्वपूर्ण प्रोजेक्ट्स का दिशा निर्देशन किया था और कई पुस्तकें लिखी थीं। पिछले दिनों अयोध्या कांड के बाद हुए दंगों के दौरान उनका दिमाग सनक गया, वे पागल हो गए। उनका पागलपन कुछ ऐसा था कि बहुत देर तक लोगों को इसका पता ही न चलता। वे काफ़ी गंभीरता के साथ सारे ऐतिहासिक तथ्यों के साथ बोलते रहते, लेकिन अचानक ही वे ज़ोर ज़ोर से गाने लगते, हिंदू पाकिस्तान में, गंगू हिंदुस्तान में। इसके बाद तो ये होता कि कोई अगर उनसे पूछता कि आप कौन हैं, तो वे कहते, मैं गंगू हूँ, तुम भी गंगू हो, यहाँ रहने वाले हम सब गंगू हैं। और फिर वे ज़ोर ज़ोर से अपना गाना शुरू कर देते। लोग कहते वे पगला गए हैं। लेकिन मैंने कहीं पढ़ा था कि पागलों के विचारों की तर्क प्रणाली दरअसल शुद्ध गणित या संगीत के स्वरों की संगति की तरह हो जाती है, इसलिए सामान्यतः सामान्य लोग उसे समझ नहीं पाते। अक्सर अगर पागलों के विचारों पर सूक्ष्मता के साथ ध्यान दिया जाए और उनके साथ पूरी तरह परिश्रम किया जाए तो पागलों के विचारों की अमूर्त तर्क प्रणाली को समझा जा सकता है। जो लेख मैंने पढ़ा था उसमें कई ऐसे नामों की सूची थी जो पागल समझे गए, लेकिन दरअसल वे जीनियस थे। लेखक ने न्यूटन की 3 बिल्लियों के लिए 3 छेद बनाने वाली बात के पीछे भी ऐसी ही एक तर्क प्रणाली को खोज निकाला था। बहरहाल उन्हें मैंने एक दिन पकड़ लिया अकेले में। मैंने उससे पूछा कि आप जो गाना हिंदू पाकिस्तान में, गंगू हिंदुस्तान में गाने लगते हैं, उसका मतलब क्या है। आश्चर्य की बात कि उन्होंने अत्यंत संतुलित, गंभीर और शांत ढंग से मेरे प्रश्न का उत्तर दिया। उन्होंने कहा, बताओ, जो लोग अथवा जिस सभ्यता के लोग सिंधु नदी के तट पर रहते थे, उन्हें विदेशियों ने क्या नाम दिया। हिंदू, मैंने कहा। तो सिंधु अब कहाँ है, उन्होंने पूछा। पाकिस्तान में, मैंने जवाब दिया। तो इसका मतलब ये कि अगर विदेशी आज उत्तर पश्चिमी सीमा पर आते तो हिंदू किसे कहते, उन्हें जो पाकिस्तान में रहते हैं। उन्होंने मुस्कुराकर फिर मुझसे पूछा, अच्छा अब बताओ, हमारे देश में सबसे पुरानी, बड़ी और महत्वपूर्ण नदी कौन सी है। गंगा, मैंने सोचकर जवाब दिया। तो विदेशी हमें क्या कहते, ये उनका प्रश्न था। मैं सोचने लगा, सोचने में कुछ वक्त लग गया। उन्होंने स्वयं ही कहा, जहाँ तक मेरा अनुमान है वे हमें गंगू कहते। उसके बाद उन्होंने आंखें बंद कर लीं और अपने गाने में मगन हो गए। मैंने बहुत सोचा, लेकिन उनकी बात में किसी अतार्किक या अराजक तर्क प्रणाली के लक्षण ज़रा भी नहीं दिखे। मैं इस तरह अचानक एक पागल इतिहासकार के विचारों की तर्क पद्धति के शुद्ध अंकगणित तक जा पहुंचा था। उस दिन के बाद से जब कोई मुझसे पूछता है कि आप कौन हैं, तो मेरा भी यही उत्तर होता है, मैं गंगू हूँ और आप भी गंगू हैं। यहाँ उत्तर प्रदेश से लेकर बिहार तक का सारा इलाका, जिसे दोआब कहा जाता है, वो गंगू प्रदेश है। आपने पिछले कुछ दिनों में शहर की दीवारों पर अक्सर ये नारा लिखा हुआ देखा होगा, गर्व से कहो हम गंगू हैं। इसका लेखक मैं ही हूँ। अगर आपको लगता है कि मैं भी सनक गया हूँ, तो मेरे घर के पते पर कृपया एक चिट्ठी डाल दें। मेरे गांव से अगर कोई मुझे यहाँ से ले जाएगा। अच्छा, अब मैं गाना गाऊंगा।
So cross. You speak so many languages here, you know, and I really want to know what that story is. So afterwards, I'm going to take you out and have a private kind of audience with you and hear that again. This event is called What Is Not Said, and it comes from a theory about the short story. Ernest Hemingway, I think one of the greatest short story writers, he came up with this theory that the short story is like an iceberg. And what you're reading is really the tip of the iceberg, what you can see above the water. But 9/10 of the iceberg is underneath. what you don't see. And what I like to say is that's the bit that sinks you, you know, that's the bit that actually gets you and does all the work, really. So I was wondering, is that something that resonates you, with you, that theory? Do you find that in your work? Can you see that coming out?
Like Paul said, that iceberg theory, there is a lot more inside the water, below the surface, as it is more than it's above the water. In the same way, story suggests a lot of things which are not stated directly, and the reader has to be very alert and infer those things. I think writers should know how to prune the language and what things to omit, and how to multiply the intensities to make his story work. If you will eliminate those parts which you know, which writer knows, that will strengthen the story, it will give power to the story. And if you will eliminate those things which you don't know, they'll weaken your story. The reader can see the hollow places. It should be the other way, like reader should fill the gaps the writer leaves with his feelings, with their feelings. I think there should be a balance between what should be omitted and what should not be, so the reader is not burdened with the detailing, or he should not feel that something is being left out, so the iceberg is not being inverted. There must be a balance, and I have used this in my story, just like I said in Banaf Shaikhab. It goes in the same manner, that it's not being mentioned there that a breakup of the girl has been happened, and the whole story revolves around it, and I got mixed reviews on the story. Some people came to me saying that they didn't understand the story, and others who understood the story were quite happy. They loved the story. So,
Jan, what do you think? Is this something that resonates with you in your writing?
Yeah, the dangerous thing about being from Belfast is you're constantly surrounded by poets, and I see we've got a poet on stage with us here as well. And a lot of my good friends are poets, so I have been reading a lot of poetry for the last few years, and the thing that I have learned from poetry is the use of white space. So poets talk a lot about leaving the language room to breathe, that it's in those spaces between the lines and the things that aren't said that you really broker a relationship with your reader. And I think Divya has started to talk about something really interesting, which is how much worth we invest in our readers. The worst thing in the world as a reader of a novel or a short story is when you feel that the text is patronizing you, that it's telling you what to think. I love those books which ask a lot of me. They say, engage with the text, think, wrestle with it, work out what you feel about this, because that's telling me that that writer thinks I'm pretty intelligent. He or she thinks that I can do that work myself as the reader. In a short story, that is incredibly important. I'm going to name check someone who's been very important for me as a writer, and I've been a bit disgusted. There have not been very many women writers name checked off the stage that I've heard. My biggest influence as a short story writer is Alice Munro. Has anyone read Alice Munro's work? Yes. Alice Munro is a master at the art of leaving things out. Her characters have room to breathe, her dialogue has room to breathe, and her storytelling has room to breathe. And if you read a few of Alice's short story collections, very quickly you will learn about this idea of what's not said. It's much more difficult as a writer to say less than it is to say more, which is why I'm going to shut up now and let the next person speak.
I think what's quite interesting about Alison Munro is that her stories, ironically, are very long. So she takes a longer time and seemingly saying less, leaves more room. It's quite ironic, isn't it? You know, there's more on the page. But
I think with Munro, the stories wear you down to the pace that she wants you to read them at. It's the same with the great novelist Marilyn Robinson. Gilead, you cannot read Gilead at speed. It asks you to slow down and read the book at the pace it should be enjoyed.
And yourself, this idea of that short stories are all about what is not said. Is this something that resonates with you?
Yeah, I think that's more applicable to poetry than to short fiction, because I always had a problem with Hemingway is too loud. So he comes up with this pat definitions. I think a short story is like a vision, like an apocalypse. You see something for a flash. And it's a subvertive genre. It's meant to subvert. So all the writers in English or in Malayalam, my favorite short story writer is Kamala Das. And in English, it starts with Catherine Mansfield, to Alice Munro, to Margaret Atwood, and one thing that is common in all of them is the gender. So it's an art of subversion which is automatically comes out from your struggle for survival. So this bad theory about 10% above and 90%, I don't think it's very correct.
Can I jump in and say I heard Ali Smith, the Scottish writer, spoke last year, and she said because of the brevity, the short story, the shortness of it, it always had something to do with death and the passage of time and the brevity of life, which when you say struggle, that kind of fits in with that.
I think so, because the entire momentarity of our existence, I mean, that's captured much better in a short story. What is unsaid is probably more in the novel because it's a much ambitious project. So short story, to begin with, accept the ephemera of life. I mean, life is short, so story is short.
Yeah, I think I've heard someone say also that like short stories are either about death or sex. You know, I mean, those are the two kind of the topics, because it's kind of what life, the motivators of life, the fears and the things that we have around that. And there's another Scottish writer, A.L. Kennedy, who she said about short stories that some people were saying, oh, the problem with short stories, people don't read them because they're so short. You know, there's nothing to get your teeth into. You've just started to invest and they're over. And she said, short stories, well, they're short in the way that a bullet is small, you know, which I thought was brilliant. You know, they have that power. You know, But yourself, do you think that the theory is this theory that short stories are about what is not said, that a lot of it is underneath, and the power can resonate much further afterwards? Is that something that resonates with you, particularly as a poet?
I think they originate from the same place, you know.
Sorry, I can't
kind
hear.
of the moment when I feel something. So that is the take-off point. And now, which way it will go? I mean, to a poem or to a short story, it's difficult to know exactly at that moment. But one thing I think which differentiates a novel along a short story, I think that is the pace, the speed. Because when I write a short story, when I choose to write, a short story chooses me to write, to be written. So
They liked what you said. They're cheering for you all the way.
I don't know.
Maybe they could close the doors. I don't know. Okay.
It happens,
Have you finished your point there? Yeah. We're going to open it up to the floor in just a couple of minutes. So maybe just get yourself prepared. You know, wind up that story and that question in your head about short stories, and just very quickly, I know that Jan mentioned her. One of her favorite short story writers. I just very quickly before we open it up to questions. I wondered if you could just, the rest of you, and Jan maybe might want to add to your list of your favorite short story writers that maybe members of the audience could go and look up afterwards that they haven't heard of before. You might inspire them to go and read. Who would you recommend? What short story writers would you recommend?
Sorry, can you please watch your story?
Short story writers that you love, that you would recommend our audience to go and read.
Okay, I love O. Henry, especially his Green Door. I love that story. And then Hemingway, of course. Hills like white elephants. I love that story. I loved it. The story consists only of dialogues, and reading once, it might be, really complex. In the first reading, you might not know what's going in the story. Even I had to read it again.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Jan, would you like to add to your list other writers that you love?
Oh, that's a dangerous question.
Is it?
Yeah, I could talk for hours about this.
Oh, no, don't do that.
No.
Don't do that.
Number one, Flannery O'Connor, may her name be praised. I would not be sitting here where I am today without Flannery. She is, in my opinion, the best short story writer that there is. So please, if you haven't read her, go and buy A Good Man is Hard to Find. Won't help you find a good man, but it will change your life in terms of short stories. And then the other person, the saint who walks among us, is George Saunders, American writer, and I love what he's doing with the short story and really subverting the form.
Wonderful. Would you like to recommend some short story writers?
Well, most of them are Malayalam writers. So I think whatever name she mentioned, and there's one name which I'm not getting, but she wrote a great short story last year called The Cat Person.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
What's her name? She's just released a collection.
No, she hasn't. I think that was a fantastic short story. So please Google it and find out. It's called Cat Person.
It's in the New Yorker, so
Yeah,
if you,
Yeah.
do you know her name? Or something? Well,
She-
that's really
yeah.
Thanks very much. Or something. Yeah?
So I would like to add one name.
Yes, go ahead.
Uday sir. He's my favorite, and he's my favorite. His story Tirich is very famous, and I totally loved it. And another story which is as lengthy as a novella, but it's been called by him a long story, something like that, Peeli Chhatri Wali Ladki. And I totally love it. And you must read it all.
Thank you very much.
And
That's
the
very
translation is also available in English.
nice. Any writers that you would recommend our audience to read, short stories?
To me, yeah, like he said, most in the beginning because I didn't know anything about English writing and all. I was born in a small village, so but I read Manto and Premchand and also some and the storytelling is telling. So there were many people in my village. They started telling me stories. So that is the reason I came close to his stories. And the writer who influenced me more, I mean, from other countries, the first was Borges. It happened to be, I found his extraordinary tales. And those are such a small, few sentences, few lines. And they were so piercing. And they were so, in a way, like a very strong alcohol. So they went inside the mind. And I kept on thinking it's not, in a way, inflating something. It's something to shrink something, to distill out something. So I always try to write very small short stories, but unfortunately every story becomes very long. And that is, like she said, when I was asked to write a short story for one special number of Hans magazine, so I thought I intended to write one short story for one issue. But the magazine was going into the print, and I couldn't end it. So I requested the editor that possibly in the next issue I will be concluding it. And again it happened. So it was like episodic. So 5 episodes I wrote, Girl with the Golden Parasol, Peeli Chhatri Wali Ladki, and even today I think it's not yet over. So it happens, I think.
Okay, right. Are you ready? You all fired up? You are. You're very excited. Okay. Do you have a microphone to this? She's got lovely hair. They both have, actually.
Hi. Hello. Thank you for the wonderful talk. I want to ask either Ms. Carson or Mr. Madhavan, as a writer, when the thought of a new story first comes to your head, are there tips you could give on how you can decide what form you should pursue, or do you start writing and see where it goes? Do you choose microfiction, short fiction, novel beforehand, or is it a part of the process?
Do you want to speak first? Do you want to go first?
Why don't you start?
I'll start. 2 things that I would say about that. One, I have recently started seeing myself as more of a storyteller than a writer, and then really spending a lot of time thinking about the vehicle that I'm going to put that story into. So I started writing for radio drama as well, which is another completely different vehicle to put them in. And the number one tip I would say, this is really practical, is go for a walk with your story. So someone has mentioned it several times at this festival, the gestation period of a story is really important. Even before you sit down at your desk or your computer, I get my coat on and I walk around East Belfast. Apparently I look really angry when I'm doing it, but I'm thinking about the story, I'm developing it. It's a little bit like being pregnant with the story. I've not had a baby, but I've heard there's a point where you have to push. It's the same with the story. It will get to a point where it tells you, I'm a short story, I'm a novel, I need to be a radio play, but you need to mull it over. It might be spend time with it, it might be walk, it might be talk to someone else about it, but that gestation period is really important. When you are writing a short story, how do you know if it's a short story, a novel, a poem, when you've got an idea?
Okay. I think it's an automatic choice because a novel requires a lot of planning ahead because you have to find time ahead. Short story is a much shorter exercise. Secondly, the whole process, I think, I'll compare it to how pearls are formed. A little dirt, falls into the oyster, and it gathers that pearly stuff. So, short story is probably like that. So I know what has fertilized. Some egg is fertilized within me when that is going to be a short story. But novel is a much bigger project. I don't think there is any confusion between what is going to be a novel and what is going to be a short story. At the conception, it is decided, I think.
Okay. We have another question here.
I wanted to ask the entire panel that in India, I don't know if you have the same problem in Ireland, you are not considered a serious writer unless you write a novel. You can't continue to write short stories and be considered a serious writer. Though in India, we've had a great tradition of Manto, as you mentioned, Rabindranath Tagore, Premchand. But for some reason now, your publishers feel that you have to write a novel. Is it like that in Ireland too?
There's a weird kind of dichotomy here because a lot of the publishers, from a lucrative perspective, they want you to write a novel because novels sell better and they make more money. But because we've talked a lot about Joyce, and we all grew up under the shadow of Frank O'Connor and some fantastic short story writers in Ireland. There is this tradition of the short story, and it's the other way around. People expect an Irish writer to be able to master the short story form as well. And we do have a wonderful tradition of literary journals like The Stinging Fly that focus on the short story. There are short story festivals. But when it comes to actually hard cash, there's still that little question at the back, and is there a novel in you as well? So there's the kudos, and then there's actually the cash.
And we're actually lucky in Ireland compared to the UK because it's even harder in the UK to get a short story collection published. I mean, the big publishing houses may only publish one a year. And I know some very successful, award-winning, let's put it, writers who've won some of the biggest awards in the world, and they go to get their first collection out and have been given zero.
Yeah.
And you're to be grateful that they have published it because of the money that they have to invest in order to publish the book will probably not be made back, unfortunately. So that's the sort of dichotomy that we're living in just now. Can we have another question? We've got, would you like to, there you go. And we must go back as well because we don't want any prejudice for the front row or anything.
मेरा एक सवाल उदय प्रकाश जी से है। उदय प्रकाश जी, आपने अभी अपनी वक्तव्य में कहा कि शॉर्ट स्टोरी लिखते लिखते आपकी कुछ कहानियाँ नॉवेल की तरह हो गई। ऐसा जैसे कृष्णा सोपती ने भी ए लड़की जब लिखा तो शॉर्ट स्टोरी के रूप में छपा, लेकिन बाद में वो नॉवल के रूप में प्रकाशित हुआ। और भी कई लेखकों की ऐसी बड़ी कहानियाँ हैं जो रूपांतरित होकर के नॉवल में ले ली गई। ऐसा क्यों होता है? बल्कि जैसा आपने कहा कि वही जो पीली छतरी वाली लड़की है उसमें उसे और भी ज़्यादा आगे एक्सटेंड करने की आपको ज़रूरत महसूस होती है। तो ये जो शॉर्ट स्टोरी और नॉवल में फ़र्क कैसे करेंगे और वो कौन सा ऐसा तत्व है जो इसे ठीक करता है?
मुझे लगता है कि इसका उत्तर दिया जा चुका है अभी। मैं बस यही कहना चाहता हूँ, जस्ट आई वांट टू से वन थिंग। मैं ये कहना चाहता हूँ कि शायद ये जैसा आपने कहा कि जब तक कोई उपन्यास न लिखे उसको वो क्या है, हाँ, उसको वो सम्मान या वो स्वीकृति नहीं मिलती, और कहानीकार माना जाता है कि वो ज़रा छोटी विधा। ऐसा है नहीं, ऐसा होना नहीं चाहिए। और प्रेमचंद जी की भी मैं बात करूं तो उनकी कहानियां ज़्यादा अच्छी हैं, और जिन उपन्यासों की बहुत चर्चा है उनसे आप तुलना करके देखें बहुत ही ऑब्जेक्टिवली, तो कहानियां उनकी बहुत अच्छी हैं। मंटो तो कहानी के लिए ही जाने जाते हैं, छोटी कहानियों के लिए। और मैं शायद बहुत विनम्रता से कहूँगा कि मैं शायद साहित्य अकेडमी में पहला था जिसकी एक कहानी को अवार्ड दिया गया, साहित्य अकेडमी अवार्ड, और इसके पहले कभी ऐसा हुआ नहीं था। ये एक तरह का डिपार्चर था। तो कोशिश रहती है कि ये नहीं करना चाहिए फ़र्क कि कौन सी कविता है, कौन सी कहानी है। मुझे याद आता है कि ये पुष्किन को लेकर जब उसने येवगेनी ओनेगिन लिखा था तो ये चला था लंबे समय तक विवाद कि ये एपिक है कि ये नॉवेल है, और फिर अभी भी तक डिसाइडेड नहीं है कि वो एपिक है कि नॉवेल है। तो ये क्या फ़र्क है? और अब तो अंग्रेज़ी में खूब लिखा जा रहा है, विक्रम चंद्रा ने भी लिखा है, सब ने लिखा है, तो बहुत मुश्किल है ये कह पाना। और मैं आपकी बात से बिल्कुल सहमत हूँ। This is what I feel, and what happens with the publishers, that if I write a little short story which is a little longer, so they try to make it as a novel. So they choose a thick paper, they create a different kind of a layout, and it goes and published as a novel. So I get more respect as a novelist than a short story writer. So it happens.
Thank you. Yeah. Do you want to add something there?
Yeah, I would like to add, short stories are like toothache. We have to drill it and fill it instantly, as soon as possible. But novels are more like bridge work. And he asked, how can we differentiate between story and a novel? The unity of impact and intensity of impact, unity of effect it brings with it, and it's not the shortness of a story decides that it's a short story. I would like to add this, like a beautiful piece of furniture or a beautiful dish, which might look simple, but it needs a lot of skill and a lot of focus to design. Short stories are like that.
Thank you very much. Towards the middle here, and then we'll...
Yes, my question is for the panel. I am trying to figure out what kind of writer I'll be when my work will be published, because I write short stories, stories for features, serials in one go. If I take pause even for 5 seconds, I lose the plot. So somebody called me, I'll be called ulti writer, a person who throws out the story like a vomit. So I'm just trying to figure out, it comes with an idea, the trigger comes from the newspapers, from some incident, and when I start writing, I do not know I'm going to write 500 words or 5,000 words, but it happens in one go. So in the last 10 months, I have written more than 40 short stories, 4 features and 7 serials, and it happens when it has to happen. So I'm just trying to figure out what kind of writer I'll become when my work will be published.
Jan has a character that can see the future. I don't know if she can also do that as a person, and she's just disguising herself in that character. Can you see what will become of this poor man?
Yeah.
Because he's vomiting regularly.
I will say, if you haven't read it already, it's a very famous book at home. Anne Lamott wrote a book called Bird by Bird about the act of writing. And I'm sorry, I'm going to swear just a little bit, but I'm quoting her, so it's okay. She talks about the shitty first draft and how you have to get really, really okay with that. Not everything you write is going to be anything more than literary vomit at the first stage. And she says to be like a child with that. Have fun, let your imagination go wherever it needs to go, however long it needs to be, however short. It's the editing where you do the serious work. Yes. I have really, really learnt in the last 2 years about how much of a book is actually editing. 15, 16, 17 edits of something before it gets to where it's meant to be. If there's any George Saunders fans in the house, the Simply a Girl Diaries, in my opinion, is the best short story that's been written in the last 20 years. It took him 16 years to write it. 16 years of editing. That's what you're looking at. I'm sorry, I wish there was a quicker answer, but...
How old are you? Ooh. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So you're going to be on stage giving advice. You'll be like, everyone vomit. Just get it all out of you. Look what happened to me. I got a book deal. That's what you...
I'm a businessman, and I call myself unpaid writer. I'm not even a graduate. My English is so poor. When I went to the first publisher, he told me to hire a ghostwriter because my vocabulary is very limited to 500 to 600 words. I could not even study properly. I left my graduation midway. So
Okay.
in spite of all the problems, they have liked the concept and can back even as a group.
This is how easy it is to get a book deal. Amazing. I'm inspired. I'm moving to India. I'm going to try and get a really good deal. Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing that with us. Can we... this side now, this side. You choose. Come on. You give the mic to someone there? Yes, perfect. Yeah.
I wanted to know, as a writer, especially of short stories, do you ever feel the pressure of having a twist in the end? Because with novels, people may or may not be expecting that, but with short story, as it goes on, somewhere a reader is expecting a twist in the end, especially these days. So as a writer, do you think about it, or do you feel pressured, or is there any external pressure from the the commercial angle of it or something like that?
Yeah, endings can be very difficult, but when do you decide the story is ending? And there is a pressure to have that kind of, what they describe as that inevitable surprise that they say an ending should be. Do you feel the pressure when you're writing the ending that you're supposed to come up with some cracking last line or action that's going to surprise people?
Yeah, I mean, it's peculiar to my language, Malayalam and Bengali, because the best fiction comes out during a particular period. In Kerala, it's called Onam. In Bengali, it is Puja. These are the festival seasons when the magazines put out. So a story you are working on will be taken by them, and there is some kind of a deadline pressure as the date.
The market is sort of dictating a certain kind of story.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the only pressure.
Yes. Do you feel any pressure with your endings?
I
Because the O.
feel-
Henry
Yeah.
that style is very much what she's describing.
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah, yeah. I feel duty of a writer is to write and to write well and keep on writing well. He should not sell out or burn out to any outer forces. He should go with the flow. A reader is very intelligent to make out what is intentionally put inside the story. So a writer should not be pressurized from the outer forces, I guess.
Unless you want paid, of course, which is good. I know that's which we all need every now and again, But I know, yes, I agree. Uday?
One thing, if like he says, during Deepavali and these kind of festivals, many magazines they come out to celebrate the ritual, and they demand for short stories and poems and all. And every time I'm told that we need a story for this issue, every time I fail. So it happens, like recently it happened. It's happening. In last 15 years, I couldn't publish a short story anywhere except on my Facebook notes or my blog. You won't find anywhere in any printed magazine. The reason is I receive a letter that we are going to bring out this issue and this is the deadline. In the past, I did that when I was really needed something for earning or something. But now, for the last 1.5 decades or 2 decades, every time I fail. And I think there's a kind of a head block, it happens. Like someone is just putting pressure that you have to complete it. And every time someone, it's like I couldn't complete my answer when I heard the noise outside. So it's kind of a noise, when you receive a phone call, then you receive a SMS that print is. It's not. It acts as something which is hindering. So it happens, and that is. But I still feel because of multiplication of the medium, now I feel free to write anything on my Facebook page, notes, in blogs, and magazines. They borrow it and they publish it. So I think this is the better way. It's kind of a freedom I have. Yeah.
Well, we're very lucky that the festival has had 2 events specifically on the short story already, and one again tomorrow, and to focus on this as a genre because it's often overlooked. And we hope that you've enjoyed this session today on short stories. Could you show your appreciation for the panel, please? Well, thank you very much. Enjoy your lunch. Thank you very much.
Thank you.